Hello, welcome to another episode of Unlocked. I'm Scott, and today we're going to talk about lots of things with 22-time Emmy Award winning director and producer Nick Nanton. Now, how did he become an award-winning director and producer? Well, he Googled it. Yeah, so you're going to hear that story on this interview. He wrote a book called StorySelling. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller. He has directed more than 60 documentaries, sold out a Broadway show, and he's been on the stage and shared the stage with people like Larry King, Dick Vitale, Kenny Chesney, Charles Barkley, Tony Robbins, will.i.am, and Sir Richard Branson. So, you know, he's been around some people and had some influence with some of those people. They've had influence on him, and he shares that influence with us, which is super cool. Now, he has a really, really interesting story about how he got involved with Larry King. And there's some lessons and some tidbits that are going to come from that I want you to pay attention to. So pay close attention to that story. It's awesome. And he has a show called In Case You Didn't Know, which was executive produced by Larry King, and he's going to tell you how that all happened. So anyway, without further ado, let's get on with this interview. Here we come, Nick. Nick, it is so cool to have you, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I'm interested to hear from an actual career-based, telling stories all the time storyteller, right? Like, this is going to be so cool because I love stories. We all love stories. That's where we come from, right? Since cavemen existed, this is what we do, is tell stories. So how did you even get into this world in the first place?
You know, it's funny. I mean, I started considering this the other day. That, you know, I got into making films. I made my first film in 2010 because I've been a musician my whole life, and I'm a songwriter, and music is just really hard. Like, it's just really hard. For me, at least, it's really hard.
So, are you saying filmmaking is a lot easier than music?
Oh my gosh, dude! Like it feels like 1,000 times easier. So we can walk through that, or like making a career of it. I'll put it that way. But I think that's because of how many failures I've had in my life before, that like I have learned so much from failing a lot that I was able to like easily put together a filmmaking team and do some, we can talk all about that. But when I really thought back to it, like I fell in love with music as a kid. I mean, I started playing guitar at 6, started songwriting at 16, put out my first record at 18. And so I think I really fell in love with storytelling as a kid. Through music, and then I started storytelling, we'll call it, when I started songwriting at 16, and then I started going to Nashville regularly to write. I learned early on in my career when I realized that, you know, I could hold a note, but no one was gonna like pay to hear me sing. I was gonna be a writer, and I got told by a big manager in the music business, like, if you just want to be a writer, you should really focus on like pop and country, and I'd say rock falls into that now too. So I really sort of honed in on pop and country, and so I started going to Nashville writing a ton of country. I still do. I have songs out by Lee Brice and Darius Rucker. I have a new one coming out by Ray Lynn, the artist, and so I've been writing forever. But so I fell in love with stories unbeknownst to me. Songwriting is really interesting because if you really break it down, you've got typically, and you can break all the rules, but let's just talk about typical rules. You got 4 lines of a first chorus, 4 lines of a first verse, 4 lines of a chorus, 4 lines of a second verse, more or less. That's 12 lines, and you may have a 2 to 4 line bridge. So like 14 to 16 lines to tell a story that people can see themselves in the middle of. And so thankfully, with the friends who I've been working with for years and years who are professional songwriters, I've had the blessing of working with Grammy Award winning and nominated and Song of the Year guys, and they're just so freaking good at it. I've just learned, I've learned a lot about emotion, right? And then when it came to making films, I was like, let me try to make a documentary. This music thing is really freaking hard. And so I Googled how to win an Emmy. I followed the directions. I made my first documentary, and I got 2 Emmy nominations and won an Emmy. And I was like, well, my business partner was like, you should do more of that. I was like, okay. And so I just started doing more of it. But really what it is, because and I really couldn't. I direct like so. It's I love this reference. For those who get it, they'll get it. Those who don't, I'll sound like an old man. But have you ever seen the movie Office Space? Back in the day, the guy goes, "So what exactly would you say you do around here?" And that's how I feel because I don't shoot the cameras, I don't write the storylines or the outlines, I don't edit. I don't. All I do is operate within my unique ability, which is a whole other concept, but is have meaningful conversations that lead to produced outcomes. That's all I do. I do it in front of the camera, behind the camera, to cut the deal, like all that stuff on podcasts. It's all literally all I do 99% of my career, which is awesome. I enjoy it. That's why I do it. But so storytelling to me and directing is really just building a great team. And so it's been the easiest thing I've ever done because I know I'm inept at so many things that like, oh, I wouldn't even bother trying to shoot that. Like I can run a camera decently, but I can't shoot it like these guys can. So I can't light it like those guys. I can't edit like those guys. So I use a principle that Jeff Bezos talks about: never hire someone you don't admire. And so I just hire people that I admire, and making films is so easy.
So, oh gosh, dropped my pen because I got so excited. So, you said you have leading conversations that lead to produced outcomes. Is that what you said?
Meaningful. I have meaningful conversations. So I endeavor to have
meaningful conversations.
Yep.
All right. That's the essence of humanity, right? That is the essence of community. That's the base of all communication within anything that we do, right? And I talk with leaders a lot of companies and organizations and teams and whatnot, but you take that nugget of information, what you do, and it applies directly to what we need to do within business and commerce and just relationships in general, right?
It does. And I think where people miss a lot on that is meaningful. It's like, so look, so TikTok, the big rage right now. And interestingly, if you actually look at the TikTok demographics, I didn't know this. Someone taught me this yesterday, 2 days ago, that like they're aging up. It's like, I think something like 21% of TikTok's demo is like 40 to 50. And 21, it's almost a quarter of it. So like really interesting. And by the way, the For You page on TikTok is the best algorithm by far on the internet right now. Like my understanding is Instagram's using that algorithm now, so is Facebook and so. But interestingly, the reason, well, look, like I have a friend who he's learned, like we were in a group the other day and someone was teaching us all about TikTok. One of my friends is the top IVF doctor, in vitro fertilization doctor I think in the world. And he's got 60 million plays on TikTok. And he was saying like in the last like 2 months. And he was saying that he thought it was ridiculous, but his buddy's like, you need to try it. And he said, I thought it was utterly ridiculous until in the last month, at least 50% of the patients that came in because of TikTok. And that's like in vitro in New York City, like you are talking like high dollar, and this guy's the most successful. He has like I don't know, the success rate is off the charts. It's crazy. But anyway, I was like, wait a second. But then another guy's like, oh, awesome. And he starts posting stuff, and I clearly see within this post that he shares with our group so quickly that he missed the meaningful part. He posted something about himself as opposed to the IVF doctor post about like, I mean, all sorts of things like how your menstrual cycle really works. Here's a video of me putting in, impregnating an egg, like stuff that people are interested in as opposed to all about me. And so that's what I think the big, if we're going to unlock something here, let's unlock the fact that when you're trying to have meaningful conversation or meaningful communication, it shouldn't be about you. That doesn't mean, by the way, a lot of people means that they shouldn't share their stories, share their experience. It's not that at all. It's actually the exact opposite. When your stories and your experience, when you believe they're valuable enough to help someone else out, you'll get out of the way and you'll start sharing it, regardless of if you have 20 pounds to lose or you're not the most eloquent speaker or like whatever, or you haven't, climbed Everest yet. You only summited a smaller mountain or like whatever it is. We all have I hate the term imposter syndrome because if you don't have it, you're not trying hard enough. You're not in rooms with people bigger than you. I think we all have it, and it's okay. That's like a healthy questioning of ourselves. But the fact of the matter is, like if you and I've been using this example a lot recently, if you and I were hiking up a trail and you saw a snake that was poisonous, like what are you going to do? If I'm about to step on it, what are you going to do?
Save you, right?
You're going to say, don't step on that, Nick, because you know that that snake is poisonous. And so that's like the perfect example of like, you're not a zoologist, I don't think. You're not like a snake specialist, but you have knowledge that will help me in that capacity. And it's not about you, it's about helping me. And so when we flip our mindset for sharing stories and sharing our knowledge to that, instead of like, oh, how could I look good on social media sharing this, to, man, what have I really, I mean, start with this. What have I really failed at dismally that I wish someone would have shared with me, that if I share with someone else, it could maybe save them 10 or 20 years of heartache or hardship. Like, you know, those hacks you see on Facebook or Instagram, like, I was today days old when I figured this out. It's like, those are the things like, oh my God, how did I not know this?
Yeah.
Or like a thing that you figured out. And it's really good that most people, like we said, aren't narcissistic egomaniacs, but we all do have things to share. We all do have things that can help other people. It's just, we got to flip it around. We got to unlock the fact that it's not about us. It's about the audience. And that's what changes it into meaningful communication.
Yeah, I totally agree. So what's your thing that you would want to give based on what you've experienced? That thing that you wish 20 years ago, you're like, ah, man, I wish somebody would have told me that.
Oh, so many things. I think the unique ability conversation for me is one of my favorite ones, and it's a Dan Sullivan concept. And by the way, I don't name drop, but I always give credit where credit's due. So Dan Sullivan is likely known. I mean, he's known as, and he very likely is the top entrepreneur coach in the world. He's coached pretty much everybody. And Dan's concept of unique ability goes essentially like this. He starts out by telling you about the concept of retirement, and how the word retire means to take out of use. And as Dan would say, you know, when you become useless, the universe wants its parts back. And so I would say God, but that's fine. And so and I haven't done a lot of research on this, but it seems to make sense. Dan basically says that the concept of retirement was like a World War II, I believe, concept, when German soldiers were coming back and couldn't get jobs because the factories were still filled up with the old people. So they had basically agreed, hey, if the old people will agree to go home, we'll pay part of something we make every week to take care of them so we can have jobs and be productive, like it's our turn. And so that's what they did. But most of us are no longer digging ditches, working factories, or even most of us aren't fighting in wars either, by the way. And so this whole idea of retirement comes really from, like, at some point you age out, like it's too hard to dig the ditches or lay the railways or to do this hard factory work. And so instead, most of us in the world who are typically living in first world countries doing pretty low labor intensity jobs, like we're using our brains for more things, which is awesome. That's human evolution, right? And societal evolution. It's amazing. But what we should be focused on is, like, instead of like suffering through all these things that, like, I can't wait to be done one day, because I don't know about you, but I know most people I know who retire, like, they're bored out of their mind, or they end up getting a part-time job, or they go from playing, as Dan says, go from playing offense their whole life to playing defense. Now it's like, how do I not lose all the money I worked to make regularly? So it's like, it really messes with a lot of people's heads. And so basically his idea of unique ability is you should try to figure out the one thing in your life, your unique ability, that you probably were born with. They probably celebrated you till you were 5 years old. They probably beat it out of you in school till you're 18 or 22. And then you basically would try to save up from 22 or 25 or 30, whenever you got out of school or med school or professional school, till 65, so you can get back to doing what you loved. So instead of that, like, painstaking process, why don't we just try to figure out what we love today, and that we would do the rest of our life. We'd be more motivated to wake up every day and do more of it, and we'd provide more value to the world. Whether you want to charge for it or not is irrelevant, but you would be more valuable to the rest of the world. Now, everyone's like, oh God, where do I start, right? Like, that's a hard thing. So what Dan suggests is make a list of 10 things that rub you wrong right now. And over the next quarter, 90 days, try to get rid of one or two of them. And every quarter, try to do the same thing. And it's much like remodeling a kitchen or something. When you paint the cabinets, all of a sudden the backsplash doesn't go. So then you got to change the backsplash. Now you have new cabinets and backsplash. You didn't even realize how worn the floor looked. And so once you start removing the things that cause you the highest friction, you'll start finding things that now there's a new thing that causes you the highest friction because it rolls up. And so as you do this, you start realizing what it is that you really enjoy doing. And so you can tell how esoteric mine is, and everyone's is different. Like, I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time working on, like, all I want to do all day, every day, is to have meaningful conversations that lead to produced outcomes. You asked me to come on this show, no problem. I'm going to do my best. I may not always land a meaningful conversation, but I'm going to show up and try. And the produced outcome will be your podcast, whatever you want to be. If you told me you wanted me to write a book for your audience, if I agree, I probably wouldn't agree to do it. But if I did agree to do it, I would go hire a ghostwriter, and I'd have a meaningful conversation with that ghostwriter, and they would produce the outcome of the book. I do the same thing with my films. I do the same thing with my podcast. I have a writer who writes all my outlines for my podcast because I don't like doing that work. I'll read the outline 10 minutes before the podcast, and then I'm in a place to have the most meaningful conversation I can because I didn't have to do all the work myself, but I did the work. I outsourced a lot of it, but I'm in a position where I understand the concepts that this person typically talks the most about, whatever's in their newest book, whatever, and we can have a great conversation from there. So that's all I try to do, and I wish that's impossible in the school system, quite frankly. I mean, I went to law school. I'm a lawyer too, right? I don't practice, but I'm licensed. So you really can't do that in school. And there are some things like I ran 3 miles today and then lifted weights. Like, that's not always fun. Like, there are some things you need to do, like some basics. You probably need to learn to read. Not probably. You need to learn to read. You need to learn to write. You need to learn some basic math. There's some things you just got to deal with. I got kids in school right now, a senior, a freshman, and a fifth grader, and they all hate some aspect of what they're learning, and I get it. But once you go beyond that, and even while you're doing that, like, I encourage my kids to try to figure out, like, what is it that drives you every day? So anyway, long-winded answer, but I wish someone would have shared that with me. Like, I wish I would have started working on my unique ability at like 5 or 10 as opposed to 30 or 35.
Yeah. And I think that when people talk about, their purpose and making an impact, because there is a lot of that going around right now, right?
Sure.
People wanting that desire. I read something recently where it's like, hey, think about it. All of the people that have truly made an enormous impact on our society, in your life, whatever. Most of those individuals are generally around the age of 55 or so,
Yep.
right? Average, right? You don't usually meet somebody that's 22 that has made an enormous impact on the
Right.
planet or on society as a whole, or us as humans, right? It's like,
Yep.
it usually comes later in life because they've worked through this process and so I mean, I would even throw that tidbit in, right? Is like, set expectations for yourself, realistic ones that give yourself some space, right? And time to nurture that and to go on that. But start it, right? Start it because it is a process.
Well, and it's a journey. Like, I read Will Smith's book, Will, pre-slap. It hit different at the time. You see what I did there?
Nice. So it wasn't called Will pre-slap?
It was called Will.
Okay, just checking.
I did read it, yeah. But it is a great book, by the way. But one of the things he talks about pretty early on is, and it's so simple, it sounds stupid, but it's profound, that like, nobody's born with any experience in anything. Like, and literally all we get is the journey. So like, yes, there is, no matter how little friction no matter how much friction you remove from your life, you're gonna find friction. Like, let's say someone who's super loaded, who doesn't have to pick up anything around the house, like, their friction might be that the maid doesn't put down, the drink every day in the exact right spot, because that's the thing that bothers them the most. Like, you're always going to have friction. If you don't, humans are really good at creating it for themselves. Like, you find people who have all the money in the world, they find other problems. Like, this is a known thing. So you're going to have friction. It is a journey, but easier said than done. I'm saying it for myself too. Like, try to enjoy the process, because that is all you get. That's literally all you get. And I know one day on my deathbed, if I'm lucky enough to be able to process it all and I don't, get hit by a car or something, hopefully not. But like, I'm sure I'll be like, man, I wish I didn't I wish I didn't wish away those 10 minutes in the doctor's office or that hour. Like, I wish I had that back, right? And we all would. I think if we think about it that way, we would. And so I would say just try to get used to the friction in the journey, but try to reduce the friction in areas of your life while figuring out where can I provide more value and what do I love doing. Sometimes it pays well, sometimes it doesn't, but I will say I haven't seen many, and we'd have to really think it through. Haven't seen many things that people get really good at that they can't get paid highly for. So even if you're like, I don't know, the best social worker in the world, like you can probably get high-end speaking gigs for corporations sharing the inspiring stories, or write books like Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Good friend of mine, sold 500 million books. He started out as a school teacher in inner city schools. And like, he's got some incredible stories, and he learned what makes an incredible story, what motivates people, even people who don't like you, and sort of turn that into, use that journey to at least subconsciously write those books, and it's worked out, And so what makes you more valuable? What do you love doing? And again, do more of it. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to quit your job tomorrow. Like there's some things I wish I didn't have to do. I mean, my flight got delayed yesterday. I got home late last night. Like there's sometimes things are just like, ugh. But part of that is you can be impatient. I am. But, don't be stupid. Sometimes you got to work the Burger King or McDonald's job to get your music career going. Like, be responsible. Like, there's certain things if you have a family or you need to eat, or like, you can't just go, screw it, let's do it. You got to do it with some level of responsibility and thought. But, so I love your point. Like, incrementally start biting off more of it and try to figure out how to make money doing it or how to provide more value. And when you provide value, the money usually shows up.
Yeah, and another thing I really loved about what you said is the fact that you have found, for now in this time of your life, your unique ability, right? That thing that really you love to do, and you outsource the other stuff. Now, this is a principle I teach to a lot of leaders called 70-30, right? Living in your 70, which means 70% of the time you should be doing the things you love. 30% of the time, naturally, we just do some of the things that drain us, that we're not great at, right? It's kind of like, because we got to practice those things, and we're going to have to do them at some point in our lives in some way, shape, or form, right? Yep. So living in our 70, to make sure that we're also outsourcing those things that are in our 30, so that we can make sure we're living our lives, full of energy and life. And not, and I relate this to like, writing your name with your right hand versus writing your name with your left, your dominant hand versus writing it with your non-dominant hand, right? Is that, people, you're super easy. You only think about it with their dominant hand. Non-dominant hand, they're like, oh, this is grueling. It's messy. It's kind of ugly. It's not, I have to really think about it. And if I had to write a 10-page paper with my non-dominant hand, it's going to be torture, but I could do it. Yeah. Why do people live this way? That's what I sit there and say. I was like, people live this way. They're writing papers, long essays with their non-dominant hand every day of their lives. They wake up going, I got to write a whole paper with my non-dominant hand today. And I'm not excited about it, but it's part of my job. And I'm just like, why? Why are you doing that? Right? Like, find places in your role, in your life. Now, if you can't switch jobs, fine, but find places and opportunities to exercise the thing that you're great at so that you can be fulfilled.
I could not agree more. And I also would say, there are people who love, like, I'm left-handed. I love writing with my left hand, right? And one of the things that it's really interesting that you learn, is there are people who wake up and can't wait to do accounting every day. Like, realize there's people who can't wait to send an invoice and make sure it comes back. There's people who can't wait to tidy up a kitchen. Like, don't be arrogant about things that, like, I realize, like, there's an arrogance to, like, thinking that nobody would ever want to do this. Like, there are people who love it. Like, and again, that's that whole idea, like, never hire someone you don't admire, all the way down to a janitor or a cleaning person. Like, which I don't mean to say all the way down, but it's a pretty base level job. It's not typically a highly skilled job, but do that. And then the other thing I think that's really hard is, like, we all have some level of head noise that was baked into us from our youth, I would say, right? So a big piece of mine, like, we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and we were immigrants, and I look at things now and I realize I'm still, in a lot of cases, operating out of the, I'm not gonna say trauma. I had a great childhood. Like we had more love than we could spend. My parents are amazing people. They encouraged me and my brother both to get professions. He's a child forensic psychiatrist. Went to Duke and UC Davis and Tulane, and I went to law school. And like we had great upbringing. But like there's still some head noise about money and things like, oh, I couldn't afford that, or just. And even though like I've pushed myself beyond that, like one of the things I wanted because we couldn't have certain things my friends had, like different like jackets or shoes. Like as soon as I started making money, man, I bought like nice cars and but still like I find myself in these places like feeling scared, like I'm poor or not, like, or feeling like I don't have enough, or feeling like, oh, I couldn't do that. And typically when you start breaking down like what it would actually take to have someone like do something, like I live in Florida, like our grass grows ridiculous, right? Like ridiculous. And so but like I have 3/4 of an acre of my house. I'm actually in my studio, which is, I bought the house across the street during the pandemic. So my house is 30 yards that way on the lake. It cost me $150 a month to have my whole lawn done every week, edge blown, picked up, trim the trees. Like, a lot of times we have this, like, especially if you grew up like, oh, I can't let someone else mow my own yard. Like, I got to the point where it's like, man, I'm going to spend 4 hours on a Saturday trying to do this. And I realized it a long time ago, like when we had little kids and stuff like that. And it was like, I'm going to spend half of my weekend basically doing the yard and bitching and moaning about it, by the way. Because I did more yards than I ever want to do in high school to make money. And like, okay, let's just suck it up. Even though at the time I was making 30 or 40 grand a year, I just sucked it up and said, I can spend $100 whatever a month at the time. Then my wife's like, hey, I also spend the entire weekend cleaning the house. Like, might we be able to trade this off? I have like my cleaning for my house costs $125 a week. And like and I get it. If you don't have the means, I understand. Like maybe $500 a month is a lot of money. I get it, but it's a lot less money than you'd think to like have your home cleaned spotlessly once a week. Most people are paying more for that for a car payment, more than that for a cell phone payment. Like when you really start to get the head noise out and start to say, well, what is possible? Like, and maybe it's not every week, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's every other week, but like those, like start enjoying some things that you would make you feel luxurious now. Like don't feel guilty about it. You might not be where you want to be. You might be living in an apartment and you want to get a home. I'm not judging it, but like maybe that's your goal. But like maybe treat yourself a little bit to like, if you're doing the hard work, you're working on things, like maybe you should have someone come in and clean it for you every other week. Or like some of those things free your mind up and your body up to think like, oh man, that is possible. What else is possible? And allow you to start just getting that bleeding into your mind, right? And so I really encourage people, just like, that's another unique ability conversation. Like, yeah, I can mow a lawn. Yeah, it's even some good work, but like I'd rather run and lift weights and employ someone else to do the lawn. I don't know. There's so many
or just hang out with your kids. Yeah,
exactly.
Like it's like you got these priorities in life, right? And it's not saying you don't prioritize your lawn or prioritize your kids because you would like to do your lawn, right? It's not necessarily that, but it's how do you allocate the right time to do the right things, that give you life and give you energy, but also pour into others. And so, I love that concept. I love it. I love it. I embrace it and I teach it. So let me come back to a little bit to this idea of having these meaningful conversations, because you have lots of them with lots of different people, whether it's been songwriters, whether it's been, other directors, or it's been, people in the filming industry, or people, in just doing the show that you're doing with your, on your series, right? And that is powerful. In case you didn't know, is your show, right? And
yeah.
One of those that you're interviewing Larry King on this show, right? And other people in your life that you've experienced it. This thing is so well produced, man. And I don't know why I would expect anything less from a filmmaker. But here's the thing, man, is like, tell me about how those meaningful conversations that you've had with any of these individuals, any of them stand out to you that you think is such a pivotal story that it's impacted you, that you feel like we should know about?
You ask your questions, man. there's been so many. I'll say, look, the thing that's really interesting to me is like, in case you didn't know, first of all, start out, I bought a charity breakfast to meet Larry King. And because at the very least, I get to meet Larry King, but I'm always one of these people who, I've realized, especially being in the music business, I'm, I'm not, nobody owes me anything. Like, I think that's a great way to start out the day. Nobody owes me anything. So I was like, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity to do something with Larry King. Who knows? But like, I'll pay first. Like, I will do something like, rather than asking Larry King to have breakfast with me, which he might say yes to, I'll go one further and I'll buy a charity auction to support his favorite charity to go to breakfast with him. And so I did. And I sat down with Larry and he goes, went to his favorite deli in Beverly Hills and he goes, Nick, I know it said we're going to have a private breakfast, and we will, but I've been coming here for 50 years with all my friends on Saturday mornings, and I could tell them all not to come, and they're going to come anyway. So we got about an hour by ourselves. You can stay the rest of the time. You can enjoy yourself. You'll like my friends, but I know you paid a lot of money for this, so how can I help you? So first of all, really nice of him to like set the stage and actually to say, how can I help you? And by the way, Henry Winkler shows up. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's like I'm with all these old Jewish guys. As a Presbyterian guy, I'm with all these old Jewish guys in Beverly Hills that, like, I've seen most of them my entire life somewhere or another. And so I said, Larry, a couple things. Number one, I do a lot of interviews, and I don't know anyone in the world who's done more than you. So I'd love to just get a couple pointers. Number two, I bet you have some awesome stories. Like, I wouldn't mind just hearing you rip on some stories. And number three, maybe there's an opportunity we could work together. I don't really want to talk about that because you didn't even know I was in this business. You've never seen anything I've done. Like, we'll punt that till the end, and I'll share with you, and I'll send you some stuff, and then you can tell me whatever. So we went through everything. It was great. I mean, I asked him similar, like, hey, what were some of your favorite interviews? He's like, oh, so many. He's like, I interviewed every president since, I don't know, Ford or something. Like, he's like, I interviewed Martin Luther King. I was like, just mind blown. Like, everybody in the world who's famous, he had interviewed for, 70 years. He got into radio as a teenager, right? So, and then I'm like, thanks so much. I'm gonna FedEx you a copy of a couple things, and I'll follow back up with you to see if maybe there's a chance to work together. So, actually, at the time, my biggest documentary I'd done was Visioneer on Peter Diamandis about the first private space flight. And I sent to him, and I said, well, I'm going to send it to you, but how do I reach you after this? He says, well, here's the house phone, here's the cell phone. And I was like, okay. I was like, do I text you? He's like, text me, call me, I'm a communicator, damn it. I'm like, okay, all right. And so I sent him the thing, and I called the house. And by the way, every time I called the house, it went something like this. King residence. I'm like, hi, this is Nick Nanton calling for Larry. Hold please. And he's like, hello? Larry, yes. Nick Nanton, who? Nick Nanton, he's like, oh yeah, okay, hi Nick, And so I basically, he said, I watched it, it's excellent, and let me talk to my manager. Once managers get involved, it always gets complicated, but his manager was his father-in-law, which you could do the math on all that later, but his wife was a lot younger, blah, blah. So anyway, his father-in-law was like, hey, Larry promised his best friend George he could do the documentary. Would you work with him? I'm like, well, yeah, but he probably won't work with me. He's like an old Hollywood guy, and I'm not. And so he called back and said, yeah, you're right. And so I called Larry, and I said, hey, Larry, I understand your buddy George really wants to do your story. No problem. Would you mind just being a guest on my internet TV show? He goes, oh, no problem. So I created an internet TV show. So I set it up. I set up this interview with Larry, and so I had some clients come in and sit in. And then I filmed it, and we filmed it, and I loved the interview, and there's so much gold in that thing. And then I called my editor and said, hey, make it a documentary. He said, okay. So he does. I watch it. I'm blown away. And I call Larry, and the whole, hello, who? Yeah, all that. And I'm like, hey, Larry, I made this thing, but it's different than what we discussed. So, like, I want to come show it to you. Okay, come to the house. I'm like, well, all right, I live in Orlando, and you're in Beverly Hills, but I set it up with his assistant. I go to his house like 2 weeks later. I sit there in his office with him watching his life flash before his eyes, because we started as a kid and all the way up to today. At the end, he goes, excellent work. Now, what do we do with it? I'm like, well, you own a distribution company with Carlos Slim. He's like, no, much bigger than that. And so I said, all right, well, how about this? We didn't discuss this at all, but why don't you just come on? I have a business partner. Why don't you become my third partner on this series with me and my business partner? You can be an executive producer with us. And we'll if we make any money off, we'll split. He said, sounds great. Send the paperwork. So I sent over like a 2-page agreement. He signed it, and Larry King became my business partner. So like I think more than some of the stories I could tell you out of the series, which was awesome. We did I think 7 episodes, season 1, and then he passed away. So I changed to season 2 out of respect for him. Glenn Beck being episode 1 of season 2. Every one of those episodes are some of my favorite things I have ever done, because I think it's I really wish someone would pick it up and pay me to do it, because I think it's a unique format. I call it a docu-interview series, but through doing that, now that I had Larry King, right? And Larry was episode 1, and then Larry is my business partner on it. I just started being able to knock off of almost whoever I wanted. And then every conversation leads, if you have a good, meaningful conversation and you produce a good outcome, every one of those leads to another good one. And you're able to like, it allows you to like climb the ladder in a healthy way of like getting more people that people know who they are and like. So there's so many great stories from that show, but that's probably my favorite one.
Gosh, that's unreal, man. That didn't happen every day. You realize that, right, Nick?
I do.
Okay. Now, so what's the takeaway for us out of that? What do we glean from that?
Give first, right? So I led with that of I served his charity first, and I didn't ask for anything. I just paid, and I went to breakfast with him, and then I asked if the door was open, if he would mind, respectfully, if I sent him a few things and followed up with him. He said yes. At that point, okay, great. And so then I go to him again saying, hey, can I tell your life story? And I'm not asking him for anything but a couple hours. I'm not asking him for money. I'm not asking him for resources. I just said, hey, like I'm making this as friction-free as possible. And then when I got told no, I was obviously pretty disappointed, because I thought I was getting pretty close to like doing Larry King's documentary and doing his life story. Well, I said, okay, but would you let me do this? And like, what's another way I could maybe do it? I also did it the way I wanted. I did it the second best way I wanted to do it, which was in a show format. But then also, I think it's important. I had the respect to go back to him and say, hey, is this okay? It's different than what we talked about. I thought he was going to love it, but like I always honor other people's boundaries and my relationships, because that's a big part of like just having respect for other people and giving first. Like it doesn't matter if you give to a charity and then all of a sudden it looks like you don't respect their boundaries. And so it's like real careful with that. But I think there's a lot of lessons in there of like of taking the shots you've been given respectfully and trying to remove friction and always serving first. And when you do that, you do get I have other stories of getting completely like rudely shut down, which it just happens. And you have to realize that like, if I'm being the same person I am every day, is there something I could learn from that? Yes. But also some people have said some things that just make you feel really bad about yourself. Like, oh my, no, you could never do that because you're not as good as like, they say that in a lot of other ways. And then you also have to like, especially I think in all businesses, but the entertainment business to me seems to have a lot more no's. I don't know, but you just have to realize like, maybe it's not me, it's them. Maybe they're bringing some baggage with them today. I don't know if they just got in a fight with their spouse or their friend is sick, or they've had a bad 6 months or they're just not feeling good. Like I've had to sort of remove myself from that, try to remove myself. It's hard, but I've gotten plenty of those experiences as well. But I think that one is just a good example of like serve first, respect boundaries, and find ways to be of value. And in the end, Larry found it valuable, I think, that I told his life story in a way that honored him and he got to share it in his own words, the way he liked it. I wasn't doing a hit piece on him. I didn't like make him feel bad about his 7 marriages to 6 women. We did talk about women. He's like, I love women, but he talked about it in his own terms. And now in my studio, my podcast studio back there, one of my cameras is being repaired right now, or I'd be in there right now. I like this room better actually, but in there behind me, I've got Larry King's tie and suspenders his family sent me. It's framed up in there, from doing work with Larry King. And so, and I'm an immigrant kid that lives in Orlando. Like I'm not supposed to be, if I followed my own head noise, the story we all make up, I'm not supposed to be in Larry King's house in Beverly Hills and end up being an executive producer, business partner with Larry King. But like, take the shot. Like, could you provide value for the person on the other side of the table? And as I've learned how to do this better and better for people, and it's always, by the way, it's always asking, hey, what could I do for them that would be unique and valuable to them? What could I do for them? And it served me so well, because if you do that and people, can see your heart and see that you're there to serve and to help and not be manipulative. Sometimes you got to get through the manager. Sometimes it takes multiple meetings. Sometimes it takes just showing up. Sometimes it takes sending them a birthday card every year for their birthday. Like, you can meet somebody one time. You could never meet somebody. And if you drip on them with things like if they're a New York Yankees fan, like, buy the new Yankees limited edition hat and send it to them. Say, hey man, I thought you dig this. Like, when you see them, they won't know they don't know you. I sent Richard Branson an iPad with a pitch on it, and the next time I saw him, he's like, you're the one who sent the iPad, aren't you? I was like, yes. He's like, let's talk. So like, there's a lot you can do to get people's attention if you do it, again, from like going back to the very basic thing we talked about, if it's not about you. If it's like, hey, this is something I thought you'd dig. I noticed you're a fan of this. Hey, I know you're really passionate about this cause. I just donated this in your name. Like, there's so many ways, and if you're using it to get what you want, it won't land well. If you're using it to serve them with the hopes that maybe there's an opportunity for you, it'll land a lot better.
Gold, man. Seriously. That's this has been meaningful for me. Like, just the way that you express some of these things is really, really valuable. I mean, I just was jotting down key words from what you were saying, right? Ask, give first, right? Principle of giving first, which I think is, serve. It's that idea of serve. What can I do for you? How can I serve you? That's that building trust component, right? Ask, make things friction free, honor boundaries, find ways to be of value, and just, take the shot, which is, cool little phrase there. So you might as well make a t-shirt out of that.
I love it. I'm taking notes on what you found valuable because that's always helpful to me too.
I guess you'll just have to listen to the show later.
Yeah. Send me that list if you don't mind. I got most of them, but I love it. I mean,
that's good. That's your outline for your next book. So
I just said, you know what? That's great. Thanks for the idea. Like, what a great idea for a book called Give First, right? And then you just broke down my chapters for me. So thanks.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. So it's the least I could do for having you on the show, man. It's really cool. So in fact, we won't dive into it deep, but StorySelling is out. That's a book you've written. What's the premise of that book? Where can people get a hold of that?
Yeah, the real premise of that book is just like how I learned through storytelling with entrepreneurs essentially, and some celebrities at the time, not as many as now, like the value of storytelling and how to do it and basically I was doing it and I had other experts helping me. And then I said, let's break down this process. And I hired a ghostwriter and said, hey, I know what's working because I can see it working either through conversion of people, like converting to sales or customers, or through just taking people on an emotional roller coaster in a 7-minute video that I won my first Emmy for, or an hour-long video or whatever. Like, let's break this down so people understand and can use it in business. And that's what we did. So it's really how to use sort of the tried and true, how they're not Hollywood principles necessarily, but Hollywood uses them the most. Principles to break down story. Jesus did it first, right? And it works for a reason. And so, it's how to break it down so you can use storytelling in your business. It doesn't have to be for your business. It could be for your nonprofit. It could be, storytelling. There's a reason people tell stories to their children. There's a reason there's Aesop's fables that have, like lessons in them. So it's really like, it's demystifying it and making it like sort of a simple step-by-step process for anybody.
Okay. That's awesome. So sharing our story, making sure that, and I think that, like you said earlier, I think that people are reluctant to do that because they don't want to make it all about them. And I think there's a difference between, that mindset of sharing your story because it's yours personal and that you could help and impact others. And that's the difference, right? Are you sharing this for you or are you sharing it for them? And what's your goal out of that, I think, is really what's going to shape the intention and shape whether it's a benefit and value for other people. So
that's everything, man. So I just did the documentary with Chris Voss. Some of you might have heard of him. Chris has a book called Never Split the Difference. He has the most successful masterclass of all time on negotiation. Former lead FBI hostage negotiator. And it's interesting, as we were going through everything, like the skills he teaches you could very easily be manipulative. Like if you just used them for your own good. And he working with him, for the last year and a half, he just stressed just over and over and over, look, if you just do this stuff for personal gain, it will eventually fall completely flat. Like the whole idea of empathy, the movie that we did, documentary called Tactical Empathy. And the whole idea of empathy is like you actually give a damn about the other person. Like you actually Like, you want what's best for them while needing certain things for yourself. And like, that's why it works. And so that's why these strategies work. If you don't give a damn about the person on the other side and you're really just looking to serve yourself, it might work for a little while, it might work for a long while, but it won't work nearly as well as actually just trying to have meaningful relationships and conversations with people.
Good. Awesome. Man, how can people get a hold of you if they want to send you an iPad with some kind of pitch on it or something?
Yeah, so they can go to nicknanton.com. They can follow me at Nick Nanton on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. And yeah, I'd love to connect. If I can be of help to anybody, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome, man. Well, I know that people have served you in your life, and I know that you're willing to serve others. So appreciate you. You've served us. You've served me by being on. So I really appreciate that, and do my best to help you and spread the word, man.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
We spent a lot of time in this interview talking about your unique ability and discovering that. I think we all have this desire and this drive to find it. And it's around this idea of purpose and our why and all these other things that we look for in life that give us life and that are fulfilling. The thing is, we spend a lot of time dwelling on the things that make us miserable and the things that cause us pain, and how do we remove that pain? Well, if we find that unique ability, that thing that drives us, the thing that gives us life and energy, we will be more fulfilled. Even in times when things are rough, when things are hard, we'll be able to look at those things as opportunities, as opposed to looking at them as just life-draining things that suck us dry and that we're not able to move beyond. Now, another thing I want to point out was his story with Larry King. And I told you to listen up for those key points. Give first, ask, have permission, give yourself permission to ask. If you don't ask, you're never going to get anything. Remove all the friction, make it friction free. Okay. Remove the friction, honor boundaries, find ways to build value. And then, you got to take the shot, right? You've got to take the shot. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I forgot who said that, but it was somebody really famous. I know it was, and I'm going to look it up after this interview because I forget. Anyway, that's gold. Okay. Go follow Nick, join his list, get involved with Nick. He's open to talk. He wants to give. I appreciate him being on the show. If y'all want to find out more about me, you can go to skotwaldron.com. You can follow my YouTube channel, like, subscribe, comment there. Find me on LinkedIn, connect with me there. I would love it. And if y'all are interested in having me come speak at an event and empower your people, talk about unlocking their potential, let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks for being on another episode of Unlocked.